And we can hear you guys now. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
All right, excellent. Excellent.
Except for Garnie. He's presenting. Okay, thanks everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. My name is Chris Burnham. I'm with Boomi. And Boomi is a leading iPaaS integration platform and service, which means we focus on breaking down silos, connecting data, and making that data actionable. Today we're going to have a remote presenter, Garnie Bolling, who's our peer. He's in Texas and couldn't make it out. But he's going to talk about our data catalog and preparation tool and how we make it easier to discover the data.
Uh-oh. You guys hear me? Hannah, I lost everyone.
For sure. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Troubleshoot this. Hold on.
You guys are set to go.
Okay. Can you hear me, Chris?
Yep.
All right. Can you see the screen that's in front of it? Understanding your data?
Yes.
All right. Excellent, guys. Again, my name is Garnie Bolling, Solution Architect here at Boomi. And so real quick, I just wanted to quickly walk you through some of the options that what I'm hearing a lot out in the field and working with clients, customers, all sorts of around the data and data initiatives and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about what's happening today, some of the considerations that are driving some of these activities that are out there, talk about some of the backgrounds, and then give you a quick demonstration. What I'm hoping that you get an understanding, well, hopefully what you get out of this today is know that you have options to understand your information, that you actually can be part of the data culture, right? And then they can start working with the data. The joke I have with most people is, and this actually came from a friend of mine, he said he spent more time being a data janitor versus a data analyst. So he was a custodian of data versus trying to be an analyst. He spent a lot of his time focusing in those areas. Like Chris mentioned, who is Boomi? We're trying to connect anything to everything, right? Everyone to anything through our technologies and our data sets and our data solutions that are out there. We have tons of customers that are there. We're constantly growing in so many different areas. For those of you who are part of the Boomi family or have been part of the Boomi family and things like that, thank you so much. We do appreciate your continued support. But for those of you who are interested in knowing more about us, just look at the screen here. These numbers grow continuously and astounds me on how we're going, especially with the upper right-hand corner, with the amount of community members that we have moving into this space. Data is the new oil, right? Everybody's heard of the new gold or the new solar panels or whatever you want to call it until it catches fire. The reason why we're always reacting to data and what I say jokingly until it catches fire is the fact that we're all reacting to it. And why can't we be proactive with it? Why can't it work for us? Why are we working for the data in that sense? Especially many of us who are decision makers, those of us who influence decisions, those of us who are custodians of the information itself. Why is it always difficult that we're reacting to the data versus working with it? So every organization is going through some kind of data initiative. So here are some of them that are listed there, but all of them deal with the information in the middle. Every integration, it doesn't matter if you're looking at traditional ELT, ETL type patterns. Again, the previous sessions that was Sunmen, who was talking about AWS and EMR, working with Athena and Glue and things like that. Everybody's dealing with data. So data is more important than anything else today. And it doesn't matter which angle you're working at, it's the information itself that we have to touch. I'm not going to touch every one of them, but the second bullet here, the 60% bullet, Gardner, Forrester, Overman, it doesn't matter who you talk to. These are conservative numbers, by the way. 60% of the information is dormant. It's untapped, unrealized, unused. Some people used to call it dark data, but that's kind of nefarious. It really means it's unused and untapped. And then the last one it goes back to that, are you a data janitor or you're a data steward? Or are you a data analyst? What are you? So a lot of times people are focusing on trying to find and wrangle the information. So let me talk about how we actually move in that space. Some of the considerations and challenges you have when we're doing these things is how do you untap, or how do you tap into the untappable data sets that are out there? It exists in your environment. How do you know it's there? And then on the right-hand side, lack of collaboration. How many times have we talked to someone and says, oh, I think it's over here? Or we went to SharePoint and we got the wrong document. Or we went to a data source and they had the wrong information. Or we talked to someone else and they're like, they have a copy of a copy of a copy. Usually that doesn't really mean it's got most authoritative data. What's in there? It's more of the lack of collaboration of how we can work together to use and leverage the right information for the right reasons, in the right time. We've all seen this before. I think you guys can present this better than I can. Information is everywhere. And in fact, through organic growth or through acquisitions or even divestitures, you have to deal with all the silos of information everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with that. Departments grow, they have to make their needs. Organizations grow, projects grow, organizations change. There are going to be silos of information all over the place. It just lends to that unknown, undiscovered data set. But what's challenging us to the next level is the proliferation of that information. You have more services available to you today than you've ever had before, and it's continuously growing. New technologies, new groups, new ways of innovating, new ways of connecting are always moving. And then, of course, the people, projects, and organizations are constantly growing in that sense, clamoring for that. And what usually happens is that the IT organizations in the middle are stuck, right? What we're trying to do is try to build a way of helping everyone, from DevOps to engineering to governance teams to the users themselves, to be able to leverage that information, to be able to collaborate, discover, work together, and giving this information to the right people for the right time, for the right reasons. Okay. Also, here's the other part of it. First thing that everybody said, oh, that's great, Garnie, you're doing collaboration. You got information everywhere. We're going to tap into the untapped information that's out there. But what about security? Yes, data democratization, self-service data and things like that, everybody wants. But how do you strike a balance? Too much governance control. I like to talk about the Bruce Lee. I don't know if you guys remember Bruce Lee, right? One of the best martial art actors and martial artists in the world. He talked about, in his studies, if you take water and you cup it in your hand and you squeeze it really tight to control the water, what happens when you squeeze the water and try to put more control on the water? It escapes your hand. But if you cup the water, you cooperate with it, you still have more control over the water than as if you were trying to become more draconian to it. So how do you find that balance to give access and control to the people without being overly controllable of the data, which you can then lose control eventually from that? So let's talk about what we do in that sense, cataloging and preparation in that sense. So Boomi across the board, if you don't know who we are, we've been around for over 23 years. And our bailiwick or our standard is usually around iPaaS and iPaaS integrations, but there's so much more that we do. We do things from the center, from integrations, but we also leverage other technologies and offer those. Such, for example, if you got small, medium projects that are leveraging or needing API management capabilities, we have that, being able to enable and create services and catalogs around those services. On the far right-hand side, how do you build composite applications on all your integrations, being able to put those people and processes and technologies together? That empowerment or that flow aspects of it is more about that orchestration of composite applications for the purpose of working with, dealing with, and leveraging. Remember the old workflow solutions that are out there? Yeah, it's now grown into more orchestration aspects of it. But now going back to the far left of the screen, and here's where we're going to talk about today. It's more that discovery and that preparation aspects of it. How do you actually see and understand the information before you move on? A rhetorical question for the crowd. If you don't know what the data looks like, how do you know what data quality to use? What rules do you enact? If you don't know what the data looks like, how do you establish policies? It's more of that you have to know what's out there. But if you don't know what's out there, you're going to, all of us are going to try to find the information that makes it work for us. So that means we're going to be contacting any type of data sets that help us meet our goals. What if we just made it easier for you in that sense? Data catalog and prep is, and this is a one-page summary of that. It's about connecting and collecting and cultivating that information. You're bringing it together so you can actually do things like search against that, provide insights, collaborate with it, and have AI and machine learning systems running in the background, building those relationships for you. For example, wouldn't you like to know the foreign key relationships between tables? Yeah, yeah, without actually going to the database itself and begging the database administrator to give you access to it, which I know is unheard of. But wouldn't you like to know the relationships between one table being used on another table? I like to call that impact analysis. It's like, for example, if I change a column in this particular table and it's being used by 5 other tables because of certain joins, wouldn't you like to know that before you make those changes? And what about the schema drifts that are involved with that? Those are the things that the data cataloging solution can provide you. And of course, once you're able to find and understand that information, to be able to leverage it and use it. And that's why we go through the self-service component of it. Today, I'm just going to focus on the discovery and the insight portion of it. Later on, if you're interested, Chris and I and the rest of the Boomi team be more than happy to talk to you about how you can actually move from understanding it to actually taking advantage of it. Okay. Oh, that's a busy slide. I'm going to skip this one right now, and I'm going to move into what we really mean. Data cataloging and prepping is really trying to accelerate what you're doing around your product. First and foremost, discover your information. Now, when I say discovery, we all know, hey, we can connect to a database and look at the database tables. Okay, that's fine and good, but what about services? How can I actually take a look at that JSON file or even that Parquet file that Suman had in the previous session? Can I take a look at that Parquet file that was created? Can I catalog that? Can I put some definitions around each one of the elements in that column or set? How about those XML files that are out there? What about CSVs or even XLS sheets that are CSV files and things like that we're working with? Could I put some knowledge behind that? Because I'll be the first one to raise my hand on this, is how many times have I received a data set, no matter where it came from, and I'm looking at the data going, what is this? Can someone tell me more about it? Is this important? Obviously it's important, but I'm not going to use it because I know nothing about it. So how can I put some English behind that or some information behind that to make it usable? Then to add some documentation that leads into building those definitions, but also who has done what with it? Wouldn't you like to know who owns that data? Not just a database administrator. DBAs, when I used to do that, I loved it when I could say, yes, this is a database, this has all the tables, this is what you need. And everybody would come to me and say, well, how is it being used? And I'm like, I have no idea. I know these people integrate to it. I know people put stuff in, take things out. I have no idea how it's used. That's not my responsibility. So how can you add more context and get involved? Let's say my friend Chris, who may be a decision maker, that he is actually leveraging all of that to help round out all the numbers for the end of year, end of quarter, or end of week, month financing and things like that. And again, I talked a little bit about the impact aspects of it also. And the last thing is what's unique about the Boomi family is that we can actually take ETL, ELT type pattern work, tie that in with application integration like iPaaS work, and work with even existing SQL stuff, SQL scripts that are out there. Yeah, all in one location. So imagine being able to get iPaaS or REST services calling on to ETL services, calling on the SQL services that actually all work together from that, because we know that all those patterns are relevant and they exist. Okay. Working with customers, this is the actual client that I'm working with now. They actually have more than what you see on the screen, but this was a snapshot of time about 4 or 5 months ago. They had about 250 users, and they really are the ones who said they gained back 2 days of their week. They told us 75% productivity gain, because in the past, they would have to go off and search, find, and hunt, when after we came back and provided them ways of organizing that information and discovering, they were able to gain time back. What I love the most is our very last bullet on the bottom there, 21,000 objects to look at. Yeah, I mean, pessimist in me says it's way too much, but the optimist in me says, you know what, if I have all of those opportunities to look at the different levels of data that is related to the information sets I'm looking for, this is going to be helpful. I can have AI help me find the right information I'm looking for. Chris, how are we doing on speed and things like that? Have I glossed over anybody's eyes, roll, or made anybody fall asleep yet? Good, bad? I guess no news is good news.
Thumbs up from the crowd.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Hey, guys, also, there's 2 sides of the story. Again, I'm going to focus just on the left-hand side, but there's actually that whole other side of the world on the right. I like to call this the Google approach. Wouldn't it be great to be able to, everybody uses Google for, wait, I know there's 1 or 2 of you in the crowd that uses Bing, right? It's a valid tool, so that's just FYI. But Google's a great search engine. right? But what if it didn't give us the capability to click on that link to go to my favorite air fryer recipes for some sweet potato fries? If it didn't allow me to go to that link, it didn't get me to that level, would I still use Google? Yeah, it's a great search engine. It told me it found a recipe for air fryer sweet potato fries. If I don't take the next step by taking action and getting to that, working on it, that's that right-hand side, what good is it? So today I'm going to break my own rules. I'm just going to talk about the left-hand side today from that, just to wet y'all's whistles. Take you from a real quick story. Promise you guys, last few slides, we'll get to the demonstration. I've been doing this type of work for over 8 years, and this is really where it all hones down into. We connect and collect the information from those systems. We do not require any agents. You don't want any systems to go out there and add more resource powers or take resources away from your systems just to collect metadata information. So that's the other part of it is we only want to collect meta information. You don't want systems to go out there and copy data, because the moment it starts copying that information into data stores, that becomes a risk. So what we're trying to do is say, hey, let us connect. Let us pull only the information we need for metadata and create that catalog and then cultivating. I got a quick story with cultivation. Chris and I were talking about this, and we actually went to his property. He has a nice lake on it that we actually go fishing on. We actually found a piece of rock on that looks totally different than everything else. It's a piece of pottery. We pick it up. It's got man-made markings on it. It looks different than everything else. It's light. Just through our experience, we know what this piece of data is. Number one, it's a piece of pottery. Number two, we know its location, and that is Chris's property. Well, if we went in to town and looked to a cultivator and said, hey, do you know anything about this piece of pottery? Could you tell us more about it? He's going to say, you know, that piece of data looks very familiar to other data sets or other pieces of pottery in this display case. In fact, these are most of the data sets that are working in these projects in this area that you might be interested in. And Chris actually knows this in the back of the display case. There's a piece of pottery that's missing data that he has that's shaped just like the piece he has in his hand. So the curator goes, Chris, you have an opportunity to contribute what you have in your hands to make it available for other people to use and leverage and to gain knowledge from and complete projects or complete the uniquenesses of this data. And in fact, if you do that, Chris, and contribute to that, we're going to open up the whole floor so we have access to the catalog of all the information associated with all the other data sets that may be closely resembled to the work you're on. And it all just started off with just a piece of pottery or just one piece of data. So once you've gone through that, this is what we're talking about from a cataloging point of view. Then you can actually start turning on discovery, where AI engines can now cultivate parts and look at, build some rules, automatically mark systems with personal identifiable information, being able to create semantic types out of data types of the information and so on. And then you can actually create your own transformations going forward. This is the actual use case that I've actually worked on. Remember that data steward means our data analyst versus data janitor. This was the person who actually, this is their organization. Analysts would have to come in and spend time working with who is it that owns the data? Can I get access from that data from even the system administrators? They have to validate sometimes that data wasn't really useful, and they have to go back and do that process all over again. And then of course you got to go through engineering and then DevOps and then deploys and then tweak and tune it as we go forward. It took them weeks, if not months, to get new reports out there from their point of view. Plus, if someone came on 6 months from now trying to reuse what they've done, there was no feedback, there was no reuse. It was net new projects all over again. What we did is when we came in, and I worked with these guys closely, is that we were able to provide things that you see in orange on the screen, where we're able to harvest and cultivate that information. Mark the data owners, not just from a system administrator point of view, but people who actually are marked as owning that information. Plus, we added collaboration. Last week, we were able to mark those things with trusted resources, which means there are unendorsed and endorsed data sets, which I can demonstrate. Build some glossaries and dictionary terms around those items, and then, of course, give them to the administrative teams ways of controlling access to the right information when they need it. And in fact, you see there in the yellow highlight, some of the senior analysts there that are there now at that client are doing it in hours, not days, in hours. So this is pretty phenomenal from our point of view of what we're doing. So let me just jump into the demonstration here. Do we have any questions, Chris, while I'm jumping into the next screen? No. Okay. All right, guys. Can you guys see my login screen?
Yes, from
Yes.
my end.
Yes, we
Thank
can.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, guys, switching how technology is, right? So I'm going to be logging in now. Caveat, I'm logging in as an administrator to this site. Chris, I'm assuming that the font size is okay on your end. Just wanted to make sure.
It's all
So,
good.
all right, cool. So let's talk about, I'm a new member to your organization. Just like any other search engine that's out there, like Google, it's going to give me, hey, what are you looking for? What are you trying to find? It's going to be you working with the AI and saying, hey, are you looking for any of this information? Are there specific data sets that are available? So let's say I have no idea. I'm brand new to your group and you're asking me to find information around customer. An analyst could come up and says, okay, let me just find who owns it. Well, all of a sudden now I'm showing you that there's almost 3,500 assets related to the noun of customer. Now, the optimist in me says, wow, this is great. I could search. This is awesome. Everything at my fingertips. The pessimist in me says, I don't have time to go through everything to figure out what a customer is. I just want to find the data or the tables that are related to customers in a CRM system. So let's actually start taking a look at it. In fact, we actually broken it down for you already, like these tabs across the tops. Like I can actually show you all the columnar data that's associated with it. Already data dictionary terms associated with a column value that's associated to in the noun of it. Other than the reports or jobs or sources, they may have this. We have relationships with Tableau. We actually have Power BI that we can work with, and Looker and all these other powerful systems that are out there. But what I'm going to be looking at is data sets. I've gone from 3,500 data sets down to only 158 what I call database tables or files related to it. First thing that you'll notice that some of these have green checkbox shields next to it. This means it is a trusted resource. A person like an administrator or the owner of this data has deemed this system file trustworthy, which means they're encouraging you to leverage this. Now, there's other levels of endorsement, like not being endorsed at all. But there's also another one called deprecated, which means it could be in maintenance mode, or we're keeping it for legal hold reasons, or just telling people, please do not use it. Another thing that you kind of notice also here is that there is a purple shield within some of it. And the machine learning has says, oh, by the way, since you're working with a customer table, we as human beings know that it should have personal identifiable information in it. But some people actually need to be reminded that, hey, if you're going to be working with any data, know that there's PII data associated with this information set. And also you can actually see some tagging associated with it, which actually helps with our classification of that data, plus some texting or some words or sentences or phrases that describe this information. Notice here in the middle there, I have a customer's table sitting on Snowflake on the retail banking instance that is similar name as customers that's sitting on MySQL that's sitting on a shared instance for my team. If I scroll across to the side, I can actually look at the description. Customers on Snowflake is for banking, and the customers on MySQL is for CRM based. This is probably the file I'm looking for. In fact, if I actually click on the name customer, it will take me into it to give me a profile of this information. Now you're like, Garnie, you broke your first rule already. You're showing me raw data. Well, what I'm trying to tell you is that we're actually making a real-time call to the MySQL database to pull back profile information for the purpose of you to understand what's out there. If you have rights to see what data is out there, excellent. If you don't have rights to the data that's out there, you're not going to see it. In fact, there's another icon that's here. It's called mask columns. Since I'm an administrator and I own this data set, I can see everything. But you can actually apply view policies or data security policies to this by masking all the information or partially showing some information. Like, for example, the last 4 digits, like we do on credit cards online, you can actually obfuscate certain portions of the data. So that way people can say, oh, this column exists. And yes, there's some data sets that are in there. Now, there's some uniquenesses that are out there. There's some people that have asked me, Garnie, can I completely hide the column so they'll never see the name column or anything else like that? And the answer is yes. A little bit deeper conversations, but yes, we have that granular level of access and controls where we can prevent people and groups through either Active Directory, OAuth, or SMAL2 to accessing the information when they need it. And it could go from a data source, a database table, or even a column level access controls. from that. Now you notice that some other icons that are out there, this one is marked with city aspects of it. The ML has come back and said, hey, this looks like a bunch of cities. This one, oh, looks like a bunch of states, easy. But somebody in the crowd, I hope you guys are saying, aha, Garnie, you got city and state, but you don't have zip code. Well, absolutely. Let's take a look at this here real quick. If I scroll through here, I have 5 and 4. Then I have just 5. And then some of the instances that are out there that I know that like in Boston and the Northeast, they have leading zeros. And sometimes those are not picked up. So the machine learning has come back and says, you know what, I don't know. And I can't make a confident decision. And that, of course, is configurable. But we set it up to where if it's not confident that this is a zip code, we're not going to mark this as a semantic type of zip code. We're just going to leave it as an integer data type that's there. Here's another way of looking at where all the relationships that are there from a PII point of view. Let's take a look at some of the columnar information that's out there. Notice that we have a bar graph based on, let's say, the column ID. We can actually provide you all of the statistics. It can help you, obviously, with your data governance or your data quality initiatives, because look, you got 50 null values in here. You should know that. So that means it should feed your data quality engine as we go forward. Let's take a look at another column. Let's take a look at actually cities themselves. Now, instead of a bar diagram, the AI has said, you know what, we're going from integers or number-based environments into a knowledge graph type of environment. This one is a race diagram. The darker and bigger the circle, the more mass it has. So it's providing you different statistics against that information. You can also look at some specifics. We're giving you ranges of information, not specifics. I'm not going to give you every iterations of it, but this was kind of interesting. I've got multiple versions of Atlanta. Why is that? Why is that a thing? Let's go back here and take a quick look and quick gander at Atlanta. So I have 2 versions of Atlanta. See, Atlanta. Okay, so here I have 2 versions of Atlanta. Can anyone see any anomalies in this? Now, for those of you who live in California, I didn't know that there was an Atlanta, California. But in that sense, it's not true, because if you look at the zip code column, why does Atlanta, Georgia have 303 as a leading zip code? And the California one also has a 303. And having known and worked in Georgia before, I know 303 is a valid zip code for Georgia, which means this data set that's coming across from this system that uses lowercase Atlanta and uses CA as California is incorrect. Another note I can send off to my friend, hey, look at, I did this the other day. Hey guys, you might want to take a look at the city of Atlanta and either correct the formatting of it and the state that it's from for validation purposes. And then finally, let's talk about data dictionaries. Have you ever wished there was a way that I can actually put a set of terms or glossary terms associated with a column or information set? The first 2 columns you see here on the left-hand side come from the database, but then the data type itself comes from the system too. Usually that's all we get. Let's go with the assumption I know nothing about SF_ID. Some of us know what an SAP ID is, but what about SF? Don't infer, just go with me, and let's take a gander. Somebody has actually gone through in here and says, this is a customer ID or Salesforce ID. A corporate description calls it a customer ID in Salesforce. Now I know what this means. All of these columns starting from test off to the right means that someone has defined this. Now, don't worry, guys. If you already have a spreadsheet or a CSV file or a reporting system that has all of these data types defined, we can import those. So that way you're not creating them. Now, the last thing I would bring up here is, now just like on Amazon, right? We always love looking at items. I don't know about Chris. Chris likes looking at items on Amazon that start at 2 stars or ratings at 2 stars. I looking at things 4 stars and above. But when you like to get feedback from the field on, let's say, for example, this customer ID, the customer unique identifier, who's actually voted on this? Well, I see that Garnie and Dennis didn't like the description. So maybe as a data owner, I should reach out to those guys and say, hey, give me some more insight on why you didn't like this. Here's another way of looking at this. How about I can add more information about the horizontal aspects of each row, not defining the row, but just characteristics of the row. For example, AAA's in this ID column could mean that they're North American. Triple B could mean that it's from the UK. Or if it has a 007 underscore, I'm just being a little cheeky here, it's a James Bond reference from Ian Fleming, right? So this is just another way of looking and adding context to the information. I'm going to quickly jump into associations here because it covers those other 3 tabs here. And what we're doing here is we're showing you graphically, this customer table is related to these other objects in the system. Remember, I talked about impact analysis. Remember, I talked about relationships. So in this case, there are 50 similar data sets that the AI has come back with and says, oh, by the way, based upon the characteristics of customers, I have these other data sets that are very similar to customers. Now, why is this important? What if you're trying to apply a policy to customers, but you need to apply that same rule, that same policy to these other data sets that are out there? How do you start finding them? Well, what if you had an AI system who's already scanned all your environments, came back with an AI strike point or strike number, in this case, a 65% overlap, and I can actually compare these 3, I'm just doing this for just an example, to show you that, hey, there's other tables that are out there with a 60% plus overlap in that, and they're owned by my friend Fred, for example, or myself, Garnie, or Sean, or Carlos. You can actually start collaborating with these guys and say, by the way, guys, there's a new governance policy we're applying to customers. You might be aware of this. You guys may be candidates for the same policy. Be prepared. And so you can actually do some comparisons between that going forward. Another way is, remember I talked about relationships that are out there, related data sets and things like that. Remember the foreign key relationships that we talked about, like being, here's a primary key, here's a foreign key. What if I actually going to show you, in this case, this table is related, this sales order table is related to this customer table by a left outer join and an inner join. Bingo, here's your foreign key relationships that are available here. We can map that for you. So again, if you're looking at, hey, I'm going to change the SAP ID column in my customer table, just know you're going to mess up some processes that are dependent upon sales order customer number field that's out there. How about any other type of jobs that are associated with it? Let's take a look at some jobs here. Let's actually stick with the sales orders aspects of it. Sales orders here that I can actually show you. Oh, look, here are those same data joins that we saw before. Here are the functions that actually made it happen. So basically what we're showing you is detailed information of how this job is leveraging this customer data set with other data sets that are out there. And in fact, I can actually see how many times this job is run, and I can actually see the responses to that or the result sets to it. For example, in this case, I have 4 jobs all related together that make up this workflow. Starting off with sales orders, and we can tell you what the inputs and outputs are. We can actually show you that there's other jobs that are related here too. I can run the details, I can rerun the job here, or let's just go for grins here. Where did the lineage information come from this output file of this job from customer names? Well, customer names came from the stage table, which came from the customer name there, which came from where? The original customer table. And I can actually show you the 3-tier aspects of how we got there. The inputs, the outputs, and the transformations, and the inputs, outputs, and the transformations that made it happen all the way down the chain. Now, guys, I know I've run up against my time. I hope you found this useful. It's just another great way of getting insight and understanding what information that's out there that you can leverage against all of your information. Any questions that popped up? Chris, how are we doing in the room? Or anyone on Zoom?
I'm looking on chat. Let's see here. Doesn't look anyone have any questions? Garnie can handle it. Go for it.
Really cool looking data cataloging and NDM system. And I don't want to nail anybody, but how would you compare to others? What would you say differentiate you from other folks in the space?
So he wants to know how we would differentiate ourselves from other catalog solutions. So
Well, the
we
first,
wouldn't really consider this a master data solution.
Mhm.
This is all about documenting what you have, who's using it, who's allowed to use it, all that kind of stuff. So I think the way I would answer that question in the short time we had is that what we really wanted to do is there's plenty of standalone catalog solutions out there. There's also lots of standalone data preparation. There's all the jobs that you guys are writing in Python and all. What you can do when those two are tightly coupled together, and the prep jobs can be built by the knowledge of the schema and the types of data And the commonality is something that you can't do as easily when there's are two separate point solutions in your system. So that's why Boomi acquired the solution 3 years ago, and why we've really tightly built it into our platform, because it has a self-service element to, I don't know what data we have, I want to find out what we're going to use. So our customers that are cataloging 1,000 sets are speeding up the time when the analysts come to IT and say, hey, I need this data set, we need to run some analytics on the airport, how much revenue we got from all the different parking sources we have. And that happens to be 5 different data sets, right? So IT is turning those answers around much more quickly over to the analysts reading that data. So that's something we can do, and our customers are doing much faster because of the tight coupling of those two. And they know about each other as opposed to someone having to tell each other. Question?
Yeah. I'm Collins from Accenture. I think a ton of clients who are looking at Libra, Informatica, to solve some of these kind of problems. We had a question in terms of cost of the application. Is this a pure SaaS product based on licensing? And then also, is it a cloud agnostic and sit on GCP, Azure, and within the clients you can see?
Garnie, did you hear that question?
No, you're gonna have to repeat it. It was
Yeah, he was asking, there's several questions in there, I think. So one was, is it cloud agnostic? Can it run in any of the clouds, or is it in our cloud? You want to take that one?
sure. Basically, the answer is yes to both. So we have the concept of our own SaaS offering where you can run in our ecosystem and things like that. But we also have the capability of running this in any VMI anywhere else. I've got customers who have their own private clouds. So I've got it deployed. In fact, the demo that that I'm showing you right now is sitting on GCP. So in that sense, and I was accessing an AWS MySQL environment. So yes, we've had this deployed on all the top players from that. And I'll take your question to the next level. If you still need to have the classic application server deployment in a data center that you control and you run because, let's say, security reasons and things like that, absolutely, we can do that too.
Well, there's a lot more that you asked. We have a table outside of the talk. With that. I think, did you have a question for that?
In terms of the data center deployment, if it's running in a data center, can clouds reach into it?
It's more than it reads to the
Yeah. Because we've got a case where we share the data system by that data center. But a lot of our applications would be the destination center.
Yeah, so there's a lot of flexibility in the way we can architect it. But it does need to know that, so when it goes and connects to a database or an API and consumes that metadata, it doesn't even have permission to do that and a network path to get.
Guys, I have one question for the crowd, and please let Chris know. I hope this was helpful. I'm asking, was this helpful, and things like that. And if there's anything else that you would need or anything I could improve, because I know I'm in the midst of all professionals and peers. So there's anything I could do to improve what we have, but most of all, was this helpful? So thank you again, guys. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everyone out there. I apologize I wasn't able to make that.
Garnie, there's one more question.
Okay.
Hi, thanks for the presentation, great presentation. What is the setup time? Like, what is involved to set up data on Boomi? And then what is the pricing model?
You asking Chris for pricing. Chris is your man for pricing. As for getting up and running, I've actually had customers up and running within 2 weeks in production mode. And it really depends upon your environment, right? From a security standpoint. But let's assume that all the security aspects are taken care of, all the system accounts are knowledgeable, and things like that. And we have full support from InfoSec. I have had customers deploy within 2 weeks and up and running, where the users were actually leveraging the searching capabilities of this on week number 3.
Yeah, the SaaS version is a SaaS version. When you sign up, you get access to it. I think we have to do a few things on the back end, so it's pretty quick. If you're doing on premises, we've got templates from various clouds. If you were going to do it in your own data center, it would be more work and more, but it's weeks, not months. And then from a pricing, it's primarily priced by the number of data stewards and the number of data and we've got and how many sources you want to connect. We do bundles of connectors basically. But we'd be happy to talk outside.
Well, thank you again, guys.
Sorry.
Thank you all.
Great job, Garnie. Thank you. Yeah, I've actually got it on the side. I didn't bring it in. One skin.